everyone could make it and find some time today. I'll try to keep this brief. I think everybody has things to do, and I appreciate that you taking some time out. I can't really schedule these at night because there's just too much going on, and it's the only time I really have quiet time. So hopefully you'll find these useful and prep you for next classes. So all I really wanted to do was walk through some simple steps to enter variables and information into Excel, and how to take that and move it forward into calculation, creating a profit and loss statement, and doing an investment analysis. So what's going to happen is that every module, learning module, will build upon each other. The first thing we're going to do is start with a basic spreadsheet. If you don't know how to go in, it's easy. You launch Excel, and then just hit File, New, and that'll take you to a new spreadsheet. I start populating some information. Here, basically, all you do is to enter is you just click on a cell and you just type in some and you can move in and out of cells by using your arrow keys, your enter button, or just by highlighting and clicking into a specific cell. Just start with how to calculate rent, and then have to calculate a growth rate, rent growth for, say, a 5-year period of time. So let's start out with a 10-unit building, at rent of $1,000 a month, vacancy, and 3% rent growth. Now, see, I entered the numbers in, and they appear exactly as I entered them, but you could actually format that the numbers look the way you want them to look, and it's ease of formatting as well. So you can see whole numbers are entered as whole numbers. Percentages in this format need to be entered as a decimal. But if you highlight these two cells and go over here on your home ribbon and click percent style, it changes them to a percent. You could also increase the amount of decimal places that are shown using left arrow here to the right of your comma, or you could see the amount of zeros or decimals that are shown. So as you can see, that's 5%, and if I wanted to change that to any number, all I have to do is enter a whole number, no decimals, and it automatically shows up. We can change the rent to look like a current by hitting the dollar sign or the accounting sign. We could choose to comma format, which takes away the dollar sign, and change the amount of zero shown to the right of the decimal place. So, first is you want to create, you're creating a rent, is to multiply your number of units by average rent and deduct out a vacancy. The easiest way to doing that is doing it by its piece parts. So that gross potential rent is your number of units multiplied by your average rent. Now, to do, you don't know how to do calculations in Excel, you start a calculation either with an equal sign or a plus sign. You could also use a negative sign, but if you remember your signs in math, it will come as a negative number. So we do calculations by entering an equal sign and then highlighting the two variables that you want to multiply. The number, which is the asterisk sign, which is above the 8 on the number on a keyboard, or a separate key if you have a numerical keyboard, times the average rent. And when you put the equal sign in, you're able to click on these other cells. You could see that they automatically come in consequently and give you an answer. Consequently, you could also type in formula by saying equals B1 times B. And that's your gross potential rent. It'll be based on gross potential rent multiplied by vacancy rate. And then on rent, NEF for short, is our gross potential rent subtract vacancy. Again, you can see that sign in to let the cell know that it's a calculation. One calculation is put in and you hit enter, it automatically calculates. If you don't put an equal sign, they're not going to be able to click the cell or to type the cell. You're not going to get an answer. It's just going to go in as text. So equal sign tells the cell that you don't want to enter text, you want to enter a formula. We have our gross effective rent, our vacancy or net effective rent for year one. Now to that for the out years, we will have our gross potential rent by rent growth. Now we do that in the calculation. Our base year rent multiplied by 1 plus our growth rate. Formula because it's an E workaround, and multiplying your base rent by your growth factor and then adding back in your rent. And either way of cutting those two steps down to 1 is adding 1 to your growth rate. And when you multiply, it gives you and now to get effective rent for the out years is to copy over these formulas. And copy them over by highlighting the cell, hitting the button, finding your new cell and hitting paste. Well, see that when you copy this new formula over, there's a 0 entry. And that's when you copy and paste formulas in Excel, read the cells as being movable. If you take this formula and move it over to the cell, it is to take the cells and are one space over from original places in the original formula. So you can see that those are D9 and D3. When you list cell, it's E9 and C3. Now, it's fine that it says E9 because that's the rent for the current year, but this C3 number is correct because we wanted to pull this vacancy number. So go into each formula and change that after you copy it over, and it'll work fine. But another way of doing that is creating what's called an anchor in your original calculation. And how you create an anchor is by moving your cursor up in formula bar here, hiding the cell that you want to anchor. In this case, it's going to be the C number, B3. That by hitting your F4 key, and you hit your F key, is it creates an anchor. And an anchor is a dime before the row identifier and for the column identifier. So if we take this formula and copy it over, the cell will change, but the vacancy percentage value will remain the same. Once you do that, highlight your variables, just drag it over, and move over with, or the calculations move over, and your cells are automatically populated. A topic is to create a name for your variable cells. So in this case, it gives us the amount of our vacancy percentage. Just change that, instead of referring to B3 in all of our calculations here, we actually anchor this by giving it a name. And then giving it a name is you drop down into this name list here to the left of your formula bar. It says B3, that's the name of the cell now, so it defaults to the column and row number. You just select that B3, and you type a name over it, and you enter. And you can see now, when you leave the cell and go back, that's no longer named B3, it's named vacancy. Anchor that cell with, you can anchor that variable without the dollar signs, just in the cell name. And you can see, do that, the number or vacancy is highlighted as a reference back to that number that you want. And you just copy this over. And the formula moves over and calculation is correct. Now, one thing that we noticed is when we dragged over our gross rent, our formula is carrying over our growth rate for anything past the first set of cells, the first column of the calculation. So you can see M9 is 1 plus C4. C4 is 0. All this calculation is doing is multiplying E9 to 1. Do that the same way. We either go in and anchor those, which will then fix the formula as we drag it over. Or we can now change the name of this cell from V4 to growth, and changing the calculation, developing the calculation, we accomplish the same thing. Those are the first steps in building out a real estate statement or pro forma income statement. And the pro forma just is really referring to future projections. So whenever you see something with a pro forma on it, you know that it means future and not actual or past results. This is the basics on how to enter and how to create some calculations and move them forward. The next module will concentrate on taking this a step further and adding in your expenses, growing your expenses, and then calculating a net operating income, and taking that net operating income and calculating your IRRs and move into more advanced topics. Anyone have any questions?
I have numbers on my Mac. Will it work?
Things are a little bit different between the different, things work a little differently between the various programs. I'm not sure how numbers works because I haven't used it personally. Sometimes the differences are minor. When I first came out of college, Excel wasn't as widely used. There was other programs on the market. I'm in an undergrad school program called Quattro Pro. Was very soon obsolete after I graduated. When I started working, we used a spreadsheet program called Lotus Numbers, which was very similar to Excel, except to start a formula, you didn't use the equal sign, you used the at sign. So sometimes there's very minor differences that you have to learn. What differences are in numbers, I don't know. So I can't really answer that.
Okay, because I'm going to Apple like right after this, so I didn't know if I needed to download a program or if I could just use this, so I can ask.
I mean, you could purchase a student copy of Excel
Okay.
or Microsoft Office. I think it's around $65 or $80. You could go into academicsuperstore.com, all one word, and you could download and you could purchase a student copy, or just go to any Microsoft store or even Apple store. Will sell the Mac version of Office.
Okay.
It might be worth the investment perspective because everything is going to be taught on most popular programs, which are all Microsoft or PC-based programs.
Right, definitely. I agree. I'm going to do that right now then.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
That's good, man.
Now is I will I will put together a second module that builds on this, and we'll send out a meeting invite with the login instructions for later today, but most likely sometime early next week.
Okay.
All right, we'll try to do one each day until the start of the semester. That way everyone can be caught up for the next round of classes.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Have a good day. Enjoy this beautiful weather.
You too. Later.